I struggled with it, especially the first time that
Struggled.
I went back after when I started being a nurse, right? You feel a sense of guilt, right?
Guilt.
I came into the country. I was brought by my parents, right? Sense of empathy, right? You put yourself in their shoes.
50% of the population of Africa is under 20.
20 and below.
20 years old, 50% under 20. So that to me sounds like opportunity. That to me sounds like advantage. That to me sounds like untapped potential. That to me sounds like a place where you can drive that level of change, especially in this age of information and access, where all these kids coming up are having internet right in front of them. It sounds to me like change. There's hope for change because of that, right?
There is hope for change, but there's from my perspective, there's one thing missing, right? We talk about potential with our young people, and there is, but it's missing empowerment, right? So if we have all this potential, but we need to empower the youth. So that's where people like yourself, Mike, or just all of us, I guess, all of us should take it upon ourselves that we got to empower that potential, right? To say, here are the tools necessary for us to make change. Here are the resources that you need to make change. Here's the education that you need to make change. But at least I think empowerment.
Empowerment. That's okay. I'm fully on board because I'm agreeing to empowerment because if I take this back, good thing is we both know Africa. We've been home, and when you said empowerment, the thing I thought about right away, and it's part of actually what I wanted to talk about, is how the younger generation, because I was part of that, is wired to think about Africa and what is outside of Africa. So I come from a place where, because I finished high school before I left, unlike you. So by the time I got to high school, everybody in that graduating class, even years before that, success was defined by what your plans were to travel outside of the country, outside of the continent. Success was defined by, you having, whether it's school or opportunity to travel out of the country. So if that is called success, then you're telling that person that what you're leaving actually is failure, right? So so I have friends that I left behind after high school that stayed, and up until now, over 2 decades later, I'm aging myself here. I finished high school in 2000. They're thinking about their inability to travel as failure. So empowerment to me, that's the definition, right? Where that person knows that the world is a global village. I can figure out how to make it, and I'm still here in the continent, right? So empowerment is that's what came to mind straight. That how does this information get through the heads of African brothers and sisters, especially that you, Lou, just taught me that 50% of our continent is under the age of 20. Yep. How else do you think this empowerment? How can we empower, the continent?
I think it's giving back. It's going back to make those connections, right? And closing that gap that we have between the diaspora and the those that are back home, right? You mentioned technology. Don't quote me on this one. Maybe I'll do a little I want to say 40% of mobile banking in the entire world, 40% of the mobile banking is in Africa. So I mentioned I was in Kenya. I mean, that's how you buy things. It's through mobile banking. The same goes in Zimbabwe. There's also some mobile banking. So, and I'm saying this because we are moving within our technology back home. So we are able to close that gap. So Africa is not far anymore, right? You pick up your phone, Mike, and 011, enter the country code, and in 10 seconds you're talking to someone in the Gambia. So we're closing that gap between ourselves and those at home. And I think giving back, I think, is what is going to help us. Because you are right. In some places, if you stayed back home and everybody else graduated and went to the UK, went to the US, you're seeing them as successful. But the truth is, we need people at home that are on the ground, driving whatever change it is that we want to drive. So I think just bringing back that connection between the diaspora and those back home is what is going to help us to empower the youth at home.
So if a way of linking those that are outside with those on the ground, in not only sharing that information that, hey, whilst you're there, look at our continent as a place of potential, rather than thinking you can only get that from outside. It's amazing that you said that, because I didn't see that as where you were going when I was looking for empowerment. I was surprised a few episodes back, and people can go back to listen to that. I had a guest, Sandro Goho, who is in the film distribution industry, who mentioned that, and this blew my mind. He's in the heart of LA, where the movie capital is of the world, right? Distributing movies and shows and stuff like that. And because of him, his company decided to venture into Africa. And he was, I think, in Dakar for 2 years or so. Somebody will correct me here if they listen. But he was there for a while. And by the time he left, those 2 years, or the time that he was there, they've made more revenue from Africa than anywhere else as a company.
Wow.
As a company. So within a short time. So what that told me, what that made me aware of, even though I thought I knew, was how untapped Africa is.
For
right?
Sure.
So my mind was blown. And that's why I'm still in, I think I'll call this shock, where you mentioned this youth, these young people that obviously are at that age where they can be molded, hence empowerment, in saying, hey, let's give you the right information, and you can make of Africa what you think it's not. Right?
Absolutely.
And this takes me here, where let's talk about Zimbabwe, in the spirit of empowerment and in the spirit of how the mentality, actually people can look at what's around them, and that mentality of let's go look for it outside can be validated. So we have to point that out. I was able to see enough within the 2 weeks or a couple of days that I was in Zimbabwe, where these kind of accesses, whether healthcare or whether just basic needs, where you sit with somebody and they tell you, I just want a respectable wage, right, to earn a living. I'm not even talking about traveling. I'm not talking about going anywhere. I want a job that will pay me enough to live with dignity. Is that a part that, in fairness, we can put in the hands of, say, not just individuals, but like an institution like the government?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you're talking about wages, that's absolutely 100%. It's connected to the government. We will use the United States because that's where we live. That's what I know, right? The government controls to an extent, how much. Actually, no, the government controls what the minimum wage should be,
Right.
right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're hearing that people are living off of, $1, $2 a day, and yet someone spent 8 hours at work. So things like that, for sure, that's got to go to the government. I think, the government's job is to provide opportunities for individuals. And so it's unfortunate that our governments are not able to do that. So now us citizens, citizens of both sides, it's up to us as well to, we have to rally up, behind our peoples to say, hey, to the government, to hold them responsible for, individuals not getting those basic wages that they need to.
Exactly. And I wanted to be fair to people that have pointed these things out to me so that we won't look like we're not aware of things that are beyond just individuals doing something, whether it's people that are outside of the continent that we are calling out in saying you can do something no matter how small, or people that are home that think, hey, me making it as an individual is leaving the continent. So I feel like we both know, and we just, it's worth saying that we know some of these things can be put in the hands of, institutions like, like governments and systems and stuff like that. So whilst we point at a few things that we can bring to the table, we want to put that across, right? Even drinking water, governments can do something about that. But whilst they've not done enough, this is where individuals come in, and you just do your bit. Every single person, contribute in a tiny way. I want to point out something else. You have access to different parts of the world. You've traveled different parts of the world. Outside of America, you've gone to the Middle East, Europe. Right now, I believe for you, it's a choice to be in the United States. Now that you've seen the world the way you've seen it.
Yes.
Why? Why are you still here?
Why am I still here? Well, family. But
that's important.
For sure, your family. I think once you've lived as an immigrant, you understand the importance of family and being surrounded by that support system. I mean, I have traveled the world, and I've seen a lot of places that have better healthcare than America. But I think for now, this will be home. This will be home for some time. But we always have to give credit to those other countries out there that are that have improved their healthcare immensely.
Healthcare.
So. Yeah.
You keep going to healthcare because by now people know where not only your passion is, it's just what it's your bread and butter.
Yes.
And so it's fair that you keep going back to healthcare. So if all things equal, and I'm calling it that, all things equal. So, let's say healthcare equal. Is there a place that attracts you more? Is there a place that ideally where you would have lived if you had family close by, you had healthcare and all that? Do you have a place?
Home. You gotta go home.
That's
you have to go home. You have to go
beautiful.
Home. Just being somewhere where you belong. I think there's nothing more important than that. Somewhere where someone looks at your name and they pronounce it correctly. Somewhere where people are able to greet you in your mother tongue and just converse with you in your mother tongue. I think there's no place better than home.
That just took me to a question that I wanted to ask you.
Uh-huh.
After all these years of being away, about 2.5 decades, about 24 years, so you've been in America where you're regarded as a minority. You've been in workplaces where you look around and you are a minority. You've been in places where the meetings, whether events, where you look around and you're a minority. Do you think about settings like that and crave for and miss a place where that won't be an issue, if I call it that, an issue? Because I feel like at some point It's just so part of you, it's not an issue anymore. But there's no way you lose sight of that in some settings because you just can't feel it.
Yeah, I mean, it's while I work for an awesome organization, but you are
Yes.
reminded that you're the minority. Sometimes it's more in your face than others. Sometimes it's a little bit more subtle, but you earn for that, where you can be in a place where you don't feel like you're the minority. And the truth is, until we go back home, that feeling will never go away. So
That feeling, it will never go away. And this is where I want to speak in general, right? So we go through all of that as a collective, and individually, or for a certain time, that all becomes, it's all worth it. Hey, I will go through all of that to gain or get these things that I'm getting that are making me stay. Have you thought about what those things are? What are those things that make it all worth it, or that make it all acceptable?
I don't know if acceptable is I don't. I think for me, safety. Can I say safety?
That's fair.
Right. Unfortunately, the last time that I was home, this is where like the police were just like running down public transportation. Like there's like specific public transportation that they wanted us to use, like government public transportation. And if you're using private transportation, it had to be around specific times, or they needed to have specific licenses. It was just a whole lot. But I just remember they would be putting like the spikes in the middle of the road. And I saw multiple car accidents. And I was just like, it's certain things like that to where I'm like, it makes you a little bit uneasy, right?
Yes.
Just that feeling of like the police who are supposed to be protecting you, they're not protecting you. Yes. We're scared of police officers. So it's things like that sometimes safety. I'm like, man.
Yeah. And for me, in answering that, like, and I'm going back to kind of frame this question again, where, you're in a setting, I live in Boston now, Houston, where workplaces, from classroom to workplaces to events to everywhere I go, I'm conscious of the fact that I'm a minority mostly, and it wouldn't be the same at home, but in comparison to, that convict some of the things that I'll call convenience, or dare I say standard of living as an individual, it becomes all. That's why I use acceptable. Acceptable in the sense that you mentioned safety. I mentioned my access to healthcare, and now that I have a family, their access to healthcare. I mentioned even basic needs that, as an individual, bring that comfort that I feel like I've gotten used to, and now I demand as something that I need to have. So those things being a constant, make it all worth it, at least for now at this stage of my life. And I look around and I don't point that to any specific person to blame. It's like I'm privileged to have that choice, and that's how I view it. And that leads me to want to know, from all the visits that, specifically Africa, so forget all the places you visited, this is the part I call magnet or repellent, right? What are those things that attracted you in Africa? Like, oh, I miss this, I want this, I wish I could have more of this. What are those things that are magnets for you? Let's start there.
It's the people.
The people.
Right? Just looking to your left and looking to your right. You don't even need to look far. Just being surrounded by the people. The love that Africans, that we have for each other. The humanity.
Community.
Some of the happiest people I know are the people from back home, with the little that they have, just seeing how happy they are, how they're able to make ends meet, to see their faith and their belief in God that He's going to see them through. That's just phenomenal for me.
Wow. So that's what you see and you miss it. And that's the magnet, it pulls you. I wish I started the other way around because I would have loved to like seal it with that beauty. But because we're honest around here, how about the repellent? What are those things that you go, this is pushing me away? Is there any?
Um, more of like tribalism.
Mm, mm,
In Zimbabwe, we have two main tribes: the Shona tribe and the Ndebele tribe.
mm-hmm,
While my mom is Shona, I grew up with the Ndebeles, so I speak
mm,
their language. I went to school; that's the language that I was taught in. But by
mm,
just reading my name, you can tell I'm not from that tribe.
mm.
So it's unfortunate that we still sometimes have those internal wars
Oh,
and
wow.
those battles amongst each other to where it's tearing our continent down to
Mm,
having those.
mm,
So
mm.
that is that is pretty discouraging. And then you start to see like the violence from our governments to the
Mm,
locals. That
mm,
also is kind of like a you
mm,
know
mm.
a repellent. But yeah. So I think more on the government, right? Um,
Yes.
their inability to serve the people.
Wow. Wow. That's just honest. And the fact that you are from Zimbabwe, that far southern side of Africa, I'm way over there. I'm about to call it the top, but it's up there, West Africa, and I can relate so much because even other people that are from the central side. So it's an Africa thing where within a country, the different tribes, especially the majority ones. In Gambia, we have this thing, between Wolofs and Mandinkas and some minority tribes where our president before this current one it was a Jola, it's a Jola who comes from a minority tribe that when they assumed leadership,
Hmm.
they were sort of empowered now that the leader is a Jola. And
Hmm.
for
Hmm.
22 years, because he ruled for 22 years, it was good thing there was no conflict, but there was just so much tension in the air
Of
about,
course.
oh, how come because he's the leader he's appointing a lot of jolas. When were they ever in power like that? Like, oh,
Mm,
okay, you're acting like that because they're a jola. So they bring all this tribal stuff, you know it, in your face, to the point that like it becomes a thing of tension. You can feel the thickness in the air. And hearing this
absolutely.
about Zimbabwe, is just so familiar, and it's just so African, that it's a problem. And those are the things that you can't change in a snap.
For sure.
Yeah,
For
even
sure.
even
Yeah.
even marriages are issues like, oh, you can't marry this tribe, you can't marry that tribe.
Oh,
So within
absolutely.
that continent, that level of unity that should be basic is not there. And so you wonder how bigger projects can be handled when there's such a division. In rounding this up, what I love about our conversation is the fact that we didn't only point out problems. Part of what I want to bring to light is that uh, here at STEM2Roots, even by the name, how to find a pathway to going home. It's not all about packing your bag and leaving. At an individual level, we understand why some people can't just do that, because some of the reasons we didn't even talk about are economic reasons, where you're at a place that basically compensates you well enough to be able to take care of more than just you, right?
For
And
sure.
so it's noble to be actually able to do that, right? But
Hmm.
at the
Hmm.
same time, we're figuring out ways where that can be your reality and still be able to do something. That's why as soon as you mentioned it, I wrote it down, and I hope our listeners pick up again. It's worth mentioning again, where you give an example like grant writing. There's a lot of generous, you know institutions around and different like grants that are available to people that actually right to access them, bring out the story that can actually get you these grants. You can help that way and not have to get on a plane and go 17 hours to fly to Zimbabwe.
Yeah.
You also mentioned organizing, right, where within an individual and their friends, they can set up once a year to say, hey, this brunch we're supposed to go to next weekend, let's sacrifice that money to put it together, give it to a good cause, somebody that, some institution or organization that's working on giving access to drinking water, and just take
Absolutely.
this is my part once or twice a year to give that $70 that I would have spent just eating eggs and bacon, right? Or for the sake of the Starbucks drinkers, like Starbucks is almost $10. I'm gonna sacrifice 2 weekends of Starbucks and donate, and that's good enough.
Yes.
Thank you for pointing that out, because I wrote that down, right? So hopefully somebody who is listening knows they don't have to get up, pack up, and go, right? And that's what I appreciate the most in seeking solutions to who we are right here.
For sure. I think whatever profession people are in out there, I mentioned the grant writing because that's something that I do and that I'm able to give back with. But in whatever profession it is that you're in, and whatever skills it is that you have, you can make a difference.
You can find a way to make a difference, without being drastic. If that's that's holding you back, because I see that being an issue. A lot of people look at it like it's got to be this huge. I have to have this huge.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Lou, thank you for that. Thank you for your time. I really, really appreciate this. And the more we have these conversations, the more we find, bright ideas like yours. And this is what I want to pass on to the people. And I hope I'll have you back when and please let me know when you have a major project that you want people to know about, whether it's for them to contribute or be a part of, or actually, put in their 2 cents in whichever way they can, whether it's ideas or, dipping in their pockets.
Awesome. I will. Thank you so much for having me, Mike.
I appreciate you.
I do too. Thank you so much.
Thank you.